Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome back to our Wednesday morning class. First class of 2022. So we want to welcome all of you that are here today in person and you that will be joining us today online or later. We want to welcome you to this class. The class of 2022 is going to be a class that's going to take us a little deeper into understanding our world and understanding ourselves and how we truly fit into this planetary experience that we've all incarnated into. One of the things that we must understand is that we do have options, that we are not imprisoned or stuck on one dimension of living, but there are other dimensions for us. And this is becoming more and more clear as we go on in time, that we're hearing more and more about these multi-dimensions coming from so many different sources in so many different ways, even from comedy television. If you watch The Big Bang Theory, they mention quite often multiverse and the universe, and dimensions and all things. Even though it's done in the context of a comedy show, they're actually seeding a lot of interesting information. So this is the time, I believe, for it to become readily available to all those who are stepping up to become what I refer to as initiates. Initiates. To become an initiate means that you are committed to the work. The work. And the work has to do always with the idea of doing things like shadow work. Shadow work means those things that are in the shadow of our consciousness, that's in the unconscious, subconscious part of ourselves, which is mostly what is driving our life every day. One of the great illusions is we think that what we think and how we perceive life every day is the ultimate, but it is not. The ultimate of what we're being influenced by is what we are not conscious of, but it's what we're unconscious of. Therefore, it makes sense to me that we have to move into that part of ourselves that we call the shadow part. If you remember Debbie Ford's popularity some years ago in her workshop called The Work, was very popular in the 90s. And she's no longer with us in this plane, but she did a wonderful, wonderful work back there to help people to guide them into doing the shadow work. So I have so much that I've looked at that I have to totally give this over to my higher self and to Spirit as the way it wants it to come out for us. The first thing we need to realize that we are living in a time of profound transition. Profound transition. Not just a transition, but a profound transition. On our planet Earth, as we get ready to birth a new version of our ancient self. I'm going to read that again because it's a very important statement. We live in a time of profound transition on our planet as we get ready to birth a new version of our ancient selves. So one of the things that we're going to be diving into is our ancient self. Our ancient self. A lot of people might believe that what we're trying to attain is in the future. But oftentimes, it is our past that is extended into our future. And at that point, you can't separate past, present, and future. They all become accessible on one dimension of consciousness. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into some of the teachings on the ancient self. This premise that we want to look at and contemplate is an idea that tells us that we were already what we're trying to become. That's the best way I can put it. We were already what we are trying to achieve and to become. We were at one time. And of course, religion has given us a story of starting our history and our story based upon a belief in lack. This is what we've called the ego's version of the story of creation. The ego reorganizing the true story of creation has created a story of miscreation. So we are collectively embarking on a journey to become what I'm calling fifth dimensional humans once again. Once again. What does that mean? That means that we, at one time, were a higher race or a higher species. And that we, at one time, had, for instance, more strands of DNA than we have now. And that will come from this source. Now, I'm going to give you the sources. I don't mean you go out and buy books. Do what you want. But this is called the power of 12. Achieving 12-strand DNA consciousness. Now, these are not new things to me. I've dabbled in them for the last 20, 30 years. But I find it interesting that the number 12 is such a powerful number. It's one of the most powerful numbers that there are. Even into the Christian story of Jesus, who surrounds himself with 12 different disciples and apostles. Why? Why 12? 12 tribes of Israel. 12 becomes the number of power. The fact that we at one time were connected to more strands of our DNA will help us to understand the story of our planet much more easily than trying to cram it into the understanding of only 2 of the 12 strands of DNA, the double helix. So we're going to delve into that and embark onto that journey, that fifth dimensional humans will have all strands of DNA activated. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to activate it, and we'll literally experience activations of the 10 strands or 5 other pairs that we have been disconnected from. Millenniums ago, before the fall, we were a different species. We were a different species. See, this is the difference in the story of creation and evolution. Evolution comes from the ground up. We're evolving from the most primitive part of humanity. The Neanderthal, the cave people, the Homo erectus, and all of that, we're going up. But the story of creation is the opposite. It's involution versus evolution. Evolution is that which goes up from the more density. Involution is what comes down. So it's interesting that we have reached a point in our journey of consciousness in which these two have somehow connected with each other. In other words, what is ascending and what is ascending has somehow connected at this time. And that's what opens up an opportunity that is going to be opened up to us through these teachings of this class. Does that make sense to you? So what is ascending has met what is descending hasn't met what is ascending. And I don't know that we don't call that Christ consciousness. So again, using Yeshua as the way shower, as the pattern for this, would mean that that's why he came to this experience of knowing the Christ of himself, because he represents as a symbol what again is ascending and what is descending. Came together 2,000 years ago. And we started talking about that even last Sunday, and you that missed some of the last Sunday or a couple of times, you need to go back and listen to those teachings about how we laid a foundation for how this all could have actually happened. The truth is, we come from the stars. We come from the stars. And that is pretty much coming from many different sources, not just one source. It's not just woo-woo New Age teachings, but actually more into progressive science. And when I say progressive science, I mean science that is partnering with spirituality, that's coming together as a new science, a new physics, right? Again, coming together. A lot of things are coming together right now. Again, from what is descending and ascending is coming together. And that's creating and opening a new portal in consciousness. So as we go through this, if you get the little voice of ego going on in your head that this is too hard to understand, I don't get it, whatever, please don't buy into that, because you would not be here listening to this if you had not been prepared to be in a state in which to receive it. And it doesn't mean, whether it's me or you, that we immediately get it up here first. We're going to first get it in our inner self, right? This is not new teaching. We've taught this here for years, of the fact that any knowledge that comes from out here in a book or a workshop or a teacher or a facilitator is only to connect us to what is already inside of ourselves that's dormant, and to activate our own innate intelligence. Because there's nothing new under the sun, it says in Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun. There's really nothing new for you to learn. So this idea of new thought, and new age, and new this and new that is a disomer. There absolutely is nothing new. What is new to us is what we remember that we forgot. And that appears to be new to us, but it actually is the most ancient part of ourselves. Okay? So we come from the stars. We know that approximately 78 to 80% of what makes up the human atom is the same stuff exactly that star constellations are made of. Orion, Pleiades, etc. are star made of stars. Now this makes a people on the planet who have ascended starseed. Starseed. And starseed would be known as such things as first fruits, light workers, critical mass. And they are those that are deeply coded in their DNA for this time. This is why whatever my assignment is in teaching and ministering has not really been for everybody. I wanted it to be. Who doesn't? You know, I'd like to see crowds of people. I'd like to see a message that appeals to great numbers of people and whatever. But I have never done that. It's always been to a people. To a people. Not the people. To a people. And I believe that the answer for the people, collectively, is in a people. Are you with me? In a people. Now this is also given to me, and I've shared with you when I came into doing vibration, sound, frequency, tuning forks and all of that, that remember the story about how the book fell off the bookshelf, which was the book of Enoch, a big, thick book, and fell open, and I was like really trying to make a decision because I was at a crossroad that I had to choose. I could have continued on with the ministry that I had built up to 1989, 88, which was rather successful in the realm of consciousness I was in. I could reach more people with it. Are you with me? I could reach more people because they were Bible people, and they were people, I knew their language, and they had the similar background that I did, and I was able to build that very well across the country. I was very successful. I was in a different city in the United States every weekend. My schedule, I found some old papers that we used to put out, and I couldn't believe how many places I visited in a year. It was amazing how I did that. But I did, and that's what I did. But when I came to this transmission of 1988-89, which is the third transmission. The second transmission was 78-79, and the first transmission was 68-69. See, in 68-69, I moved out of more Christian, I guess you want to call it that. I never was really that traditional, but I was more in the Christian arena until 68 and 69, I came into what's called a message called the universal message of the manifestation of the sons of God, which was totally a more narrow teaching because it was only to a certain group of people who no longer believed that Jesus was the only Son of God, but believed that there was a collective sonship. That was big, to move that from fundamentals that everything was on Jesus. Jesus is the only. And then all of a sudden, we begin to find out that we are also part of the sonship of God. And that was a great movement that happened in 68 and 69, which I was a part of. Then in 78 and 79, I came into another realm of consciousness, or a movement, called universal reconciliation. Universal reconciliation taught that every person would eventually be restored and reconciled back into God, that nobody would go to hell for eternity, and all of that was wiped away. Well, it got even more narrow. So I went from here to here to here and now to here. There's a scripture comes to me right now that says, narrow is the way that leadeth unto life, but broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. It's interesting. Narrow is the way. What that means is, life is an interesting word there. It is the Greek word zoe, Z-O-E, zoe, which means vitality. So the way that leads to full vitality of being a full energetic person is narrow. And I looked up the word narrow. I thought, narrow. And few there be that goes through it. And it was very fascinating. I don't know why I want to tell you this, but I want to tell you that. The word narrow meant obstacle standing in the way of religious rite. And I thought, it's the preachers that are standing in the way of the people that we can't get by and get into our own life. Right? I thought that's interesting. So to religion itself has narrowed the way, and they stand in the way and said, you can't come in but by me. And broad is the way, but if you taught hell and sin, it was broad. That's where most of the people are in that kind of teaching. So things have narrowed that few there be get in. But the few is the key to the all. Are you with me? If that few gets in, to the message of life and reaches their critical mass, they will have an effect upon the all. That's why small groups like this can be so important. Because I believe that there are small groups all over the planet that is being led and guided similar to the way we're being led and guided. But I think they're small because they are kept under the radar. Under the radar. I've never been seen as a threat because I've never been big enough in my ministry. If I'd have become like Joel Osteen or some of these big preachers that are reaching thousands upon thousands of people that's in the limelight and being watched every minute of their life and whatever, I probably wouldn't have made it. But I just, to them, was not big enough to be a concern. I've just been seen as some off-the-wall crazy guy that has a bunch of crazy ideas and don't listen to him. I guess that's important for me to say because sometimes I've wondered how I've made it this far being so controversial. But I believe it's because I'm protected. Because I'm led and I'm guided toward these things. So we're going to talk about our ancient selves. We're going to talk about ourselves as starseed. And how we are now ready to reverse this. So the next, and now a lot of these are not going to come from these books. These books are stimulating my own revelations. So I will give you my version of what it means to be an ancient self based upon my research and study and what I've been given. We will talk about starseed. We will talk about how we can reverse this by bringing in some of the reversing the aging process teachings. So we're going to bring all the teachings are going to come together into this. This is not one subject, but it is a class that all of it begins to come together in some direction, in some way. Reclaiming our original nature is not easy, it says. There is a commitment, especially on a global level. The energy of this transition and this collective, now this is important. Because of this transition that's going on, it is also causing a collective resistance to the change it brings, which is intense and often overwhelming. So you got to understand, as we move into the intensity of 4D, fourth dimension, it is activating the resistance toward this change. Activating your 5D frequency provides us with a roadmap to help us navigate this important passage. And that's what this class is going to be. How do we get through this and not lose our true self in it? How do we go through this and stay conscious rather than doing it unconsciously? How do we stay proactive rather than becoming reactive? Another book that we will use as a reference is going to be The Alchemy of 9 Dimensions of Consciousness by Barbara Han Clow. The Mayan Code. This book was given to me by somebody here in this congregation, which I appreciate, called Telos, The Protocols of the Fifth Dimension, which awakens within us the memory of who we were in our Atlantean identity in Lemuria. You will not believe the story that resides in you. But it will not come until we activate those 5 pairs of DNA that we have been disconnected from as we came into this third dimension density. I believe with all my heart that all of this actually was activated on the Harmonic Convergence in 1987. I'd never heard of such a thing as a harmonic convergence, had no idea what it was. But when it came to me, the information, I immediately got a witness in my spirit that it was important for me to participate in this gathering on, I believe it was August 16th, 17th, 1987 was the first one. The Harmonic Convergence was people all over the earth and all over the planet who were gathering together at a certain time zone of where they lived into a time of bringing in what is called the plan. In 1987, at this time, the plan was put into practice and had its start. But it was not until March 21st, 1996, in the spring equinox, that we were actually cleared for the recoding of our DNA. Woo. Isn't that amazing? Let me do that again. Harmonic Convergence 1987 opened up the opportunity for the plan. What is the plan? It's called the plan of the ages. God has a plan, we could say in Christian language. God has a plan. It's called the plan of the ages, the plan of the worlds. Please know that the word world is from the Greek word aeon, A-E-O-N, which means an age. An age. People confuse the world with the earth. No. The world is the world systems on the earth. Are you with me? The world you live in is the world of religion, the world of education, the world of finance, the world of science, the world of this, the world of that. That's the worlds we live in. So who makes these worlds? We do. We do. If you trace all of these different systems back, you'll find out what's behind them is people. And there are those on this planet who has a different plan than God's plan. And we cannot ignore that anymore. And this is going to be a challenge for some of you who have been pretty much at the level of only new thought and positive thinking and all of that. And I am not in any way taking a thing from that. Please understand, that is a part of, that's your foundation. You know, this is what we've been trained in for decades, some of us. Meditation, contemplation, visualization, affirmation, all of those things were not the goal where we were going. It was the tools to get us to where we need to go. And this is where I disagree a little bit with those who have organized it and said this is the goal, is to become this or that. And that's why I've done my best not to overtitle us here and label us here as anything. Are we unity? A little bit. Are we science of mind? Could be. We're a little this and a little that, and we're a lot of nothing. Because we have to create the space for this new intelligence to show up. And we can't do it if we fill our head with a bunch of principles and dogmas and doctrines and perceptions of other people. We have to be a people that is creating a sacred space for the mind of God to come through. And that's why I have a little challenge here sometimes if we get too organized. And I know I'm a frustration to Tim. I know I'm a frustration to Greg and them because they every week want to know, what are we going to do? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? And I just kind of, well, whatever. Just see what happens. And it's been hard to make us really, truly a spirit-guided group of people because there is that part of us that wants to know. Right? But if we would just create more space for Spirit to come through, we would truly be what we say we are every Sunday, a Spirit-guided community. So again, the Harmonic Convergence, 1987, was a transmission time. This comes from Ken Carey's book, The Three Transmissions, the Starseed book that came out so popular and told us of these three transmissions. The plan that God had to restore us became awakened. But not until March 21st, 1996, which was a big year for me. During the spring equinox, we got the clarion call for the recoding of our DNA. Now, these are things that we will talk about that I'm giving you today. I'm only giving you the subject. How this is done, the recoding, fascinated me because of what the teaching was last year. This says this is going to be done through the astral body, now get this, and through filters into the physical through the endocrine system. I wondered why. Do you remember last year how long we stayed on the endocrine system out of the Body-Mind Workbook of Debbie Safiro? Now all of that's captured, thank goodness to Connie, thank you Connie, out there for all of the work that she's done to transcribe all those lessons from last year that she and I are getting ready to get together. All of that has been written down. But I knew, and I thought, oh, they're going to think this is so boring to talk about the endocrine system. And then I read this, that the decoding is going to happen in the astral and filters into the physical through the endocrine system, in which we will learn how to remove our DNA implants that demagnetizes or decodes our DNA story. And as I've showed you, we'll learn about the 12 strands. So let me go through some of the subjects that we will be dealing with. In lesson 1, we will present the 9-dimensional model and explain what is meant by 5D humans. That's going to be the first thing that I'm sure you're going to want to truly understand, is what in the world are we talking about, and what difference is it to be a 3D or a 5D human being. This transactional process we are in now. We're already in it. The concept of codimensionality and how we shift between 3D and 5D. And that's what we are now. We're shifting. Sometimes you're in a state of consciousness where there is non-judgment, where there is a more connection to people, where it's easier to love rather than fear and all that kind of thing. That's because you're going in and out of fifth dimension. Also, I started noticing a few years ago lapses in time, I call it. But I would be driving, this is back in Indianapolis actually, so we're talking about the later, middle 90s, that I'd be going down to the store that I'd gone to many times and found myself blocks beyond the store and wondered how I got there. How many of us are not dealing with memory lapse that we want to blame on our age? And I'm not saying there is not these kind of symptoms going on, but these symptoms that are going on because of your age or that are physical and mentally human are only symptoms of something else that's really going on. So the fact that you are already through where you have come to at this point, or you would not probably be here, that you're already tapping into times of 5D, but returning back to what you've adapted to in 3D. So you're coming in and out, in and out. Does everybody resonate with that? Do you understand? There are better times that you're in a better state of consciousness where things just look better from a higher spiritual point of view than they do at times that you're in a more lower vibration of 3D. Then you begin to see things totally different. You hear things differently. So the Bible says they shall come in and they shall come out, they shall come in and they shall come out, and finally they shall go in and not come back out. I like that. That's the Bible. They shall come in, they shall go out. They shall come in, they shall go out. And finally, there will be that time in which what they came out of, they will stay into as a new norm. So love unconditionally becomes the norm. Peace becomes the norm. Staying in the higher states of self will become the norm. We will learn let's see, how do I want to do this too? Okay, so we will learn the 9 dimensions of consciousness, as well as going further into that place. I'm sorry. Next, we will explain the nature of 4th dimension and how in both attributes, but how can we free ourselves from emotional trauma and give concrete ways to navigate the most important part of the collective travels. So this will be an important place because this is where we basically are right now. We're living 4th dimension, which is a very charged emotional part of our journey. That means everything that was more dense in 3D is charged in 4D. In 3D, you could keep down racism some. You could keep up all of these things. If you think about it, they were there. There's always been supremacy. There's always been homophobia. There's always been gender issues. And they've always been there, but they've been at a denser level that we could keep them controlled. But not now, because it's so emotionally charged that there's no way that you can hold it down. It's going to show up. So we're going to learn the nature of 4th dimension and how both contributes to both also to free us from emotional trauma. We'll also learn to introduce how components of this journey interface with the quantum physics theory of both quantum and morphic fields. That's not new, but we have seeded it. We have been in it and we've been out of it. Next, we will look at our resistance to owning our full power. I know we think we want certain things, but unconsciously we are blocked. We self-sabotage ourselves. Change is too much for us. I feel that way right now because the intensity of change is so intense that it's causing stress. It's stressful. Sometimes I think, how much can I take of this? Right? But we have to understand that this is the stress that begins the new birth of our ancient self. Stress is important to what we are and will go through at this particular time. Next, we will look at our resistance to owning our full power, our creators of reality, whether consciously or unconsciously. In this lesson will help us to understand that we have tools for breaking through our fear, guilt, and separation beliefs to activate our core vibrancy as a way to help us access 5D. So that would fall into energy, color, vibration, sound, and all of that. These are the tools that are going to be given to us. Meditation. And all of these things are going to go through a transition, because I think meditation in 5D could be very different from what meditation was in 3D. It may take on a different intensity of vibration as all of these things become more vibrant. We'll continue the journey by giving each one of you tools and techniques to navigate through the transition times. We will collapse timelines to explore our ancient 5D past and the healing of our DNA for past and future generations. We begin to access our future selves in order to understand how we can use them to create a new present for ourselves and the world. Finally, we will explore in depth how the dimensional split inside us between our third nature and our fifth dimension is reflected in our outer world. So again, our reaction is to go out here and fix the outer world and think we're going to feel better in the inner world when the outer world is only an expression of our inner world. So I'm sorry, but it's not going to help who you get in office. It could help some. It could help 3D living. Maybe. But nobody's going to agree who that is, because that's the split of 3D. Whoever your guy or gal is to get into that office is never going to be agree with the other people's idea of who that person should be. Because you can't change it out here to change it in here. We have to change it in here, and it will reflect out here. But I think we still have so much a 3D story in us of this, of playing the victim in the world, that makes us need the archetype of the hero outside of ourselves. We must find the hero inside of ourselves. That I have committed myself this year to work on more, is to not be so reactive to things that do not fit my perception of how it should be. I mean, who's to say, because I think I'm right, that I am? Based upon what's right in 3D and what's right in 5D could be a totally different thing. See? Because what's right in 5D has to fit the plan that's been activated at the time of the convergence in the 1997 spring equinox. So the plan is activated. It is out there in the higher states of consciousness, which is in us. And once we align with the divine plan and let it unfold, then this will give us a new way of adapting to a higher state or a higher norm of things like that. The transition into 5D is nearly, or I'm going to say not nearly, but is upon us. Although we live most of our time in 3D bodies, we currently reside in a fourth dimension, which is the realm of length, breadth, and depth, and time. Everybody got that? Now this is important. 4D is 3 dimensions of space with an added dimension of time. So I said, what does that mean? I need to know why the time is, the 4D is time. And what I got out of that, it is the codings and the timing of the codings to be activated. The Bible said that Christ, in the manifestation of Jesus, the teacher, happened at the fullness of time. There seems to be these cycles in time in which it is time for things to be activated. And there's nothing much you can do about it until that time frame is here. So the fourth dimension is the time for restoration, the time for awakening, the time for remembering, the time of our parts of our DNA to be decoded and activated in us. This is when time works with us, and we work with time. So we have to ask, even here at HeartLight, and we have to ask in this community, what is it time for HeartLight as we've entered into 2022, and that we're ending more to adding fourth dimension, which means through time, the activation of things that have been dormant in 3D must be activated in 4D. And it's the activation in 4D that ends up 5D. That makes sense to you? So let's go back to the fact that I talked about at one time we were star seed. At one time we have 12 strands of DNA, that we are star seed. We're not these lowly humanoids on a planet made of the dust of the earth, but we came into the earth as very intelligent, enlightened beings. We came from the star constellations. We had great technology. So, that's kind of a new idea maybe to some of you, to think of yourself in that way rather than being this human that needs to get there rather than a human that needs to remember we were there. Now this gets into some pretty interesting stuff when we get into this, so get ready, because of the fact that it's going to take us beyond our planetary thinking. Our planetary thinking. It's going to change the whole story of why we are here and how we got here and what happened to us. But if we understand that, then we know the road back to where we need basically to be. The fact that we are going through certain symptoms, which we've discussed here before, but we will look at again, is very interesting in a 5D point of view from a 3D. Just to show you how this shift is so differently. In 3D, we see the human awakening. In 5D, we see the divine awakening. This is going to be a shift. But what has been put into an active state in us is our own divinity. I did a message many years ago that shocked a lot of people, but came out of the Bible. But it said, salvation unto our God. But I thought, humans need to be saved. I thought salvation was all for human beings because they're so lost and so bad and so horrible that they needed salvation. And then I'm reading in here, salvation unto our God. God needs to be saved. So I'm thinking about that. Went with somebody out to a mall I didn't want to go to. And while they were shopping, I was sitting there just observing people walking by me, bunches of people. And I got looking at them. You know, I think very strangely, as you know. But I thought, these people don't look lost. Humanity looks very well and alive. Because I had just done a lesson on seeing God within everybody, seeing the truth in everybody. So I'm saying they're practicing this, okay? I'm going to see the God in that person with the green hair and the blue hair and rings in every orifice of their body and whatever else. I'm going to practice seeing God. And I had the hardest time because all I could see was all this humanity. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but it is God that's waking up. And why is God waking up? Because we've done the work as human beings to give God the space and time to do it. This is God's time. Humans had their time in 3D. It was all about humans' time which Einstein called a time that's relative to humanity. We made time. But I'm talking about a different time. I'm talking about God's time in the form of a plan of ages of consciousness. So now that we're in 4D, we have amplified the timings of what we have struggled to attain in 3D. And here's the thing. Now, some of you have been around the block a few times in New Thought and metaphysics. You're not new to this. You've been in it for decades, trying to manifest everything from the right partner to finance to health to peace of mind and joy and all these things. And I still see people struggling to manifest the same things. I mean, I don't know how many prosperity workshops is available to people. Who are still struggling to make ends meet, that have no offering to put in the plate when it comes around. But they're rich in workshops. They're rich in books. They're rich in principles, but no manifestation. Why? Because in 3D, they weren't aligned with the timing of its manifestation. 4D is timing. Be careful what you want in 4D. You may get it. So you better make sure that your manifestations are in alignment to your divine purpose and plan that is awakening in you. You may think you want something, and therefore, because of the timing of 4D, you could manifest and get it and start manifesting things that are not in any way in alignment to your spiritual purpose of fulfillment. For instance, I'm going to manifest winning the lottery, millions of dollars. And if you manifested that out of timing to receiving it at a time that you could use it for the highest good, it would be detrimental to you at that time, which happens to people, by the way. Some people who win huge amounts of money or inherit large amounts of money who were not ready for that the timing was on, absolutely struggle with it to the point that they have nervous breakdowns, become alcoholics, and all kinds of things because of the vast change from this to that and the off timing that it is. I hope that makes some sense to you. I'm not saying it well, but the fact you don't want to manifest something that it is not its time. And that's why it's so important for us to continue to use our prayers and affirmations and meditations to set the intention of only what is for the highest good and what is in alignment with any agreements, contracts that have been made previously or during this incarnation. Come from that premise, not with what I think I want. The fourth dimension is a dimension of getting us in alignment and timings and seasons to receive the new norms of fifth dimension. I guess what I'm saying to you is there are certain things that we think we want in 3D that we should not get in 3D because they are not 3D manifestations. So we talked about a lot of this. Interrupted sleep patterns, headaches, visions, dropping things, and all these kind of things. We gave you these, and we'll have them again for you in some way. Oh my goodness, my time is already gone again. Already gone again. Wow. So there are options that we'll be talking about in these dimensions. Actually, you're already using these dimensions in some way or another, whether you're conscious of it or not. There are not places that you go. You do not have to go anywhere. But it is a state and vibration of consciousness that has always been available to you. I always use the television thing, but it just fascinates me that all these new, you got Apple TV, you got, all these different things, Netflix and all these kind of things. And oftentimes you maybe not sign up for one of them until something comes along that you want to hear. And then you sign up for that one. And when you do, all these stations show up that you had no idea that they were there, or no reason for wanting them until you signed up for it and had access. So that's what the class is going to be, a signing up kind of thing to access new dimensions that we have not connected into. I believe and I hope that the class will be something that we can all do rather than just listen to, through some exercises and through some things that we will do through the week, that we can work on to expand more and more our levels of consciousness. This is not new. It's in most texts, especially the Bible. It's always been there. It's just that we weren't taught it in our religions, and even in New Thought. I don't think we've been taught it the way that the founders saw it. If you really read the founders and their stuff, you will see that people like Fillmore certainly had a grasp of this idea of these different dimensions. He understood it. This man was tapped into that which was way before his time as a visionary, and I do believe that what he and Myrtle birthed, was to be open to continue to bring forth those who would become accessible to these dimensions. So we are here at HeartLight trying to be the continuation of those teachings. That's why I say, yes, I am Unity plus, Science of Mind plus, all these things, Course in Miracles plus. Anything that is made into a book, into a school of thought that's been captured in third dimensional time, now it is time for it to evolve and expand itself to begin to be the bridges that we take into 5D. So be patient. We'll go through these things as slowly as we can. But I think these things will become relevant and important to all of us who must rise to the occasion of understanding the time in which we are living and our participation as a co-creator of this time of rebirthing our planet from the density of 3D through 4D into a 5D, 6, 7, 8, 9D planet. This should be an exciting time for us. Don't make it difficult and hard, but an exciting time to activate, to bring forth this plan of the ages, the healing of a planet, the healing of its inhabitants from a citizen of 3D to a citizen of 5D. And I don't care how old we are, I don't care what our chronological or biological ages are, that has nothing to do with the time you've entered into. This is your time. Your time's not over. Your time, a new time is just beginning in 4D. Let's take a moment. Again, I recognize the Holy Spirit as our true teacher, who's here to guide us and to bring all things to remembrance. We have forgot our ancient self. We strive for it because it's in us already. We're not striving for something that isn't, but we're only striving for that which has been and is in us. Our intention through these classes is for our transformation and transition and transaction to become the true creation that we were created to be. Bring to this class those that you would bring, whether in person or online. We hand this over to you and your guidance and your leadership. I only bring myself as a facilitator. We ask for your blessings upon all those who are stepping up to be the first fruits of 5D while in 3D bodies. And we say thank you, God, for this moment and this time together. And so it is. Before you leave, don't know what to say about the time we are in now. I just ask you to be cautious, not fearful. But this thing is apparently extremely contagious, although it's not really bothering a lot of people very severely, but it could, especially if you have any background with heart trouble or cancer or diabetes or something like that. You should be even that more cautious with it. And I ask that to be for us here. I'm not ready to shut us down. I want us to continue to move cautiously and mindfully as we go forward with it. My feeling, and I could be wrong, I'm going to put myself up, but I really think this is a fast-moving thing, that if people would just kind of let it come through to enough people, that this thing will move out of here by March. That just, I could be wrong, but that's just the way I feel. I feel this is kind of the end of the cycle of this particular thing that we're dealing with. I could be wrong. I remember listening to Zach Bush in the beginning of this, how he said it'd be a 2-year thing. And well, I didn't want to hear that. You know, I like the people say it's 6 months. You know, it's funny how we gravitate to what we want to hear. But he said it'd be 2 years before it would run its basic cycle. Mm-hmm. Now I have information here. Just
March will be 2 years.
Yeah, that's right. And I really think, I don't know, I just got a feeling that March is going to run a cycle. I'm wrong, I repent. But that's just my feeling about this thing. One thing he said that was kind of interesting, he said that when this happened, if everybody would have got out in nature and started hugging rather than isolating themselves, this thing would have gone through very quickly. That did not mean it would not take certain lives, because all of this stuff takes lives. The flu takes lives. Pneumonia takes lives. Everything takes some lives. And that's a hard thing for us to deal with, but that is the nature of things on 3D, that there are those that, that move to the other side. And I know that's a touchy thing. But it's so. I used to use the example of how when we're in utero and we're being formed, as the fetus is being formed, how that we don't have 10 fingers. We have these webbed feet like an amphibian. Right? And the reason you have fingers is because these cells were created to die and give you form. So it was the dying of certain cells that were programmed to die that gave you form. So we're reforming humanity. We're reforming the world. We're reforming all these systems. And there are those that, for whatever reason I can't understand, maybe their contract is to be a part of that. Now that's going to be tough to somebody that has somebody they love and they have passed away. It's not that are we still on?
Yes.
Oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't be on. You know. But I just think that those who gave their lives, say at 9/11, We're part of reshaping the world forever. Those who gave their lives in World War I, II, everything that goes on, those that give their lives are those who have contributed more than maybe those who are alive to reshape a society or a culture. And I'm telling you, we'll never be the same again when we get through this. Don't ever think we're going to go back. We have to look forward now. May this class give us a vision to look forward into what we can become.
We're still recording.
Yeah, we're gone. Thank you. God bless you that joined us.
I was going to ask you a question.
Yes, go ahead.
On your Sunday service, you're talking about that portal where Jesus came through. And
Yeah.
it's called, what was it called again? Pisces something?
Oh, the Vesica Pisces.
Vesica Pisces.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that in certain times in the world, this portal opens up and something comes through.
That's called the fullness of time.
Yeah.
The fullness of a time. The fullness of a time.
And,
Yeah.
and I was glad that you didn't get into the fatherhood of Jesus,
Yeah.
because that would have destroyed the whole talk.
Right. Tim, what do you want us to do?